Happy Friday morning, everybody.
He said it right. All right, everyone. So as you can tell, it's Coffee with Kyle and Kenny on this Friday morning. Where are we at?
We're in Traverse City, Michigan. Getting ready to ride motorcycle. Oh, you've already ridden, how far have you ridden so far?
Like 600 miles.
Yeah. He's already put in a whole charity ride.
But it's awesome. I love the Kyle Petty charity ride and met his wife Morgan and all the kids. But so total people, 125 riders?
125 bikes, about 280 riders, 240 people, I think, along in there. Because, you got the doctors and the nurses and the cops and or the state patrolmen, the motor marshals and the luggage team and the hotel team and the PR team. It's a service.
It takes a lot of people because as Brother Rusty said, better safe than sorry.
That's exactly right. Safety never takes a holiday, buddy. Remember that.
Before we talk about J.D. McDuffie, you said something to me on the very first ride. You said that you thought this was about motorcycles.
Yeah.
But it ended up being about people.
It's about people.
God, we meet. I think that's why my wife loves this so much. She loves people.
Yeah, and it's great to see. Kim is riding this year. I'm so excited that Kim
it's all you.
Listen, I'm so excited. She rode in here, raining everywhere, and she got off the bike with a huge smile on her face.
Yeah.
But it is about the people.
Yeah.
It's George and Dee Dee from Fort Lauderdale. It's just people that you meet, that you've met, and they become good friends, man. And no matter where you see them at a racetrack, you see them at the mall, you see them somewhere. They're from all over, California, Texas, Louisiana, Connecticut. They're from all over the country.
Right, okay. So before we talk about JD, one more thing, okay? And this is just me being a lover and showing respect. Where can we go to donate a little bit of money? Because camp is incredible. Yeah. I've been there. It's the real deal. Where can they go?
Yeah, you can go to victoryjunction.org. Or if you want to go through the ride, just go to KylePettyCharityRide.com. Follow us at KylePettyCharityRide.com this year, and you're going to see plenty of pictures of my man here, signing autographs, talking to fans, making it happen for all the kids at camp.
Well, I'm a little shy, but his wife, Morgan, she calls me up. She goes, Herman, you better get on social media. And I said, I will.
Yeah, he upped his game, man.
We're promoting because it's such a wonderful cause. Okay, yesterday we were at Bailey Land. Yep. It's John and Julie Bailey and their children. And of course, if you watched Coffee with Kenny on Thursday, it was all about, he sponsored J.D. McDuffie. It said Bailey Excavating.
Excavating. When you said land, it threw me off a minute.
Well, it's a joke.
It was excavating.
Bailey Land. Bailey Land, he's got his house, he's got his pond, and it's just Bailey Land. It's like a lot of fun. So anyway, I'm going to set you up, and then I would like, you taught me a lot about independence, and your father, I guess Richard,
we just grew up there.
And maybe your grandpa Lee. But J.D. McDuffie was an independent. Yes. And I just want you to explain to everybody what you saw, because the reason we're doing this Coffee with Kenny is it got way bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
And everybody really likes independence. Yes. What is your version as a petty of an independent?
So independence came along, really, everybody was an independent in the beginning because nobody had a deal. Nobody had sponsors. If you go back to the 50s, let's go back to the 50s. Yeah. And if you did have a sponsor, you'd come in to Traverse City and race here, and it would be the Grand Traverse Resort because they give you free rooms. And that was your sponsor.
Yeah, free rooms.
Free rooms, man. Yeah. Free meal. You'd put somebody at a restaurant. So everybody was an independent. As the manufacturers got into it in the late 50s and 60s, you had teams that were Chrysler teams. You had teams that were Ford teams. And you had teams that were Chevy teams, Pontiac teams, Buick teams. All the manufacturers were in it. And then you had guys that just raced that didn't have a deal. So they were independents. Okay. They were the independents. And they were not going to race they struggled to race and win races against the Bud Moores, against the Junior Johnsons, against the Petty Enterprises, the Wood Brothers of the 60s and on into the Holman and Moody's. They were anything but an independent. Yeah, right. So, but during that time, you had a group of drivers and a group of teams that came out that were and kind of found their place in the sport, especially in the late 60s, early 70s. And you mentioned JD. You had JD. Childress was an independent.
Richard Childress?
Richard Childress was an independent. As he rolled into the 70s, he was an independent. Cecil Gordon, John Sears, G.C. Spencer.
John Sears, was that That's not that Spears.
No. Sears was from down around Ellerby. He run the number 4 car.
Okay.
And Cecil run the number 24. Jeff Gordon can claim the number 24 car, but in my heart, Cecil Gordon is the 24 car. A guy named Raymond Williams he was from Pinehurst. Captain America. He had his car painted up red, white, and blue and wore a Captain America.
I love it because he was a kid at one time. That's what's burnt into his brain.
And James Hilton was an independent. These guys were independents. And what they did, they raced. And when they went to the race, they wanted to win. You don't go to
They
the race
knew they weren't going to win.
But they knew they weren't going to win.
Right.
So if they could run in the top 10,
right.
Oh my gosh, it was the Daytona 500. If they could run in the top 15, it was an amazing day. And they set their standards and it was a business model for them. And they understood their business model. The Petty Enterprises business model was to win. The Wood Brothers business model was to win. Junior Johnson was to win. These guys, they made a living. They sent their kids to college. Independents sent their kids to college. They sent their kids because they wanted their kids to be better, to do something better, to learn, to have an education. They had incredible houses because they made good money. I mean, it was good money to race. It wasn't going to be, $100,000, $150,000 because Richard Petty didn't win $100,000 in the late 60s, early 70s. Even if you won all the races, you didn't win. There was not that much money. But you're making $40,000 or $50,000 a year, which is a huge income.
Back
so,
then,
and what they would do is, Buddy Arrington was an independent. Jimmy Means, as he came along later, would have been an independent. And they would take off tires. My dad would run, 75 laps at Dover, take the tires off and roll them down the Buddy's pit.
Okay.
Buddy would put them on.
Hold on. When Kyle talks, this is normal to him, but for all of us, I want to emphasize this. So was it 500 miles at Dover?
Yeah.
Okay, 500 miles at Dover. Cast iron heads.
Yes.
They're always going to crack. Catastrophic blowups.
Yes.
So your dad puts 50, 75 laps on a tire, and you got factory sponsor because your grandpa Lee and your dad were really good, and they got the factory deal. So you would put those laps on those tires, and did you and your team automatically know? Who did you guys have a deal with?
So there were everybody helped. You helped different people. Listen, Childress on the 3 car. He would take anything that Junior had. That the 11 car.
Okay, so
he and Junior were together. He and Junior.
It was Childress and Junior Chevrolet.
Yeah. So we had we helped Jimmy Means. We helped Buddy Arrington. Jade Thomas was another great independent from the late 60s, early 70s. The Clown Prince of Motorsports. That's a whole episode. I'm telling you.
I think I've heard a little bit about this.
I'm telling you, you and I fall right into Jade Thomas.
Well, we got a little John Force in it.
Yeah, that's it.
You're a winner. You're a winner.
So you had those guys. So you had 3 or 4 teams, and Bud Moore and the Wood Brothers had 3 or 4 teams. Elmo Langley, who came along with the pace car, he was a major independent. So you look at those guys. And they made it work. They made racing work because without those guys, and I know this is going to sound crazy, and I hope it doesn't sound arrogant, but Richard Petty and David Pearson and Cale Yarborough and all those guys, they're not who they are without that group of independents because they've got to have somebody to pass. They got to have somebody to race. They got to make it look like a race. It's got to be something out there.
You needed the independents.
You need them to make the work. To make the show. We would go to Dover sometimes. And 40 car field at the time. And you go to Dover and there'd only be 36 cars. And Bill Senior or Bill Junior would call up James or call up some of these guys and say, listen, I'll buy you a couple of sets of tires and we'll pay your hotel bill if you'll come up here. Boom. They're up there the next day, they qualify.
That's big.
Just to fill the field. But they helped. NASCAR helped these independents because that was part of the NASCAR show and that's part of what made things work.
So there's some particular things that I want you to tell. Okay. Yesterday, I told the story that you told me, and I think it was a very respectful story because it makes, like those, Buddy Arrington makes him look good or JD. You told me that somebody at Petty Enterprises said, take these leaf springs over. Do you remember that story?
Yeah. We took leaf springs up to Buddy Arrington's because we run leaf springs and torsion bars because that's what a Chrysler was. If Chrysler was not coil springs.
Respond right here. Kyle's telling you chassis setups.
Leaf springs and torsion bars. And you would run them for a while and then you just get new ones. And when you got the new ones, you'd take what you had up to Buddy's. And they were new to Buddy. They were better than Buddy's. and he would have, but he had an incredible shop.
You're a kid. Oh you pull up, and you're like, oh, this guy is an independent. He's going to live in something cheap.
Yeah, he's going to be in a mobile home, and he's going to be in a one-stall shop. And you go up there, and he and Joey are working in an incredible place, man. Incredible. Got one of the nicest houses I've ever seen. And I go home and I'm telling my dad, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, what about this?
Why are we giving our stuff to Buddy?
Have you seen their place? And he's like, and James Hilton was the same way. His place was the same way. He had a shop with all new equipment and all stuff. And my dad said, yeah, here's what we do. 90 cents of every dollar we put back in a race car. Okay? 50 cents of every dollar they put back in a race car. Because they know even if they put 100% of every dollar, they don't have the factory backing. They don't have that factory support. Yeah. So that you're just not going to buy your way over the mountain. And we're in the sport right now.
Yeah.
If you're some of these teams and you're not going to buy your way over the Hendrick Mountain, you're not going to buy your way over the Gibbs Mountain, you're just not going to buy your way, man. No. So you've got to know your lane. You've got to understand your lane and you got to maximize it. And these guys knew it long before anybody else knew.
So this is Coffee with Kenny, Kyle, and you and I have already done a Kenny conversation. Go to YouTube, push in Kenny Wallace Kyle Petty. We have over an hour conversation with Kyle. We love the sport. We can talk forever, but we do got to wrap it up right now. I just want to say that, if you go to a casino, you want to win the world. So the more money you gamble, if you lose, you're broke.
That's right.
And you're telling me that these independents, they knew how much to gamble.
They knew how much they could gamble. And they knew what it took to make a living and what it took to provide for their family.
Where was Dave Marcus and all that?
He was an independent, but Dave crossed the line. This is the funny part about Dave. Dave is that one magical guy who came south, and this fascinates me, was a huge Richard Petty fan, named his son Richard. Did you know that?
Dave Marcus
named his son Richard because he was a huge Richard Petty fan. So he comes south, and he comes as an independent. And then he gets a ride in the 71 car, which was basically
Bobby Isaac?
It was the Harry Hyde car. The K&K Insurance.
Oh, man.
Drove the 71 car, drove for Jim Stacy, drove for Roger Penske, drove that freaking Matador, Javelin, whatever for Penske before Donahue and those guys drove it. He was one of the guys. Drove there, had opportunities to step across that line and work for teams, but always went back and drove his own car. Yeah. He won a race at Richmond early 80s, 81 or 82 in a little blue Malibu. I'll never forget this. And he kicked their butt that day, man. And that was such a huge upset. And, everybody goes back and I say this, and this comes from being old school. Everybody goes back when I think Tony won a race and it was like the first owner driver to win a race and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah. Marcus is like the guy.
He's the guy.
Marcus is the owner driver that wins races. The guy who had nothing, who put it all together, who threw it out there on the line on a Sunday at Richmond and kicked all the big boys' butts. Yeah. And when it was all over with, Marcus still went back and jumped in his truck and drove it home himself and snatched that motor out on Monday morning all by himself and did it all by himself. And Tony didn't do that.
Yeah, right.
Now, I appreciate Tony. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. And it's not a slam against Tony. No. It's just a different view of what an owner-driver was. And Marcus was the greatest as far as I'm concerned.
Really good stuff. I hope you all enjoyed it. And this independent story is a follow-up to yesterday because we got so many. Somebody in the lobby said, man, I love that story. So I want to say this, massive respect to Kyle. I always tell Kyle, I say, Kyle, I'm afraid of Richard. You said to me, so are you. I said, Kyle, I'm afraid of your dad, Richard. He's so famous. Kyle said, I'm afraid of him too. But all my respect to Kyle Petty and the Petty Enterprises. If you had told me years ago I'd be sitting next to Kyle Petty, I said, ain't no way, he's too famous.
But if you'd have told me last month I was going to be sitting next to Kenny Wallace, I'd say, no way, he's too famous. Man, I can't sit next to him.
Stop it. But I really feel like I'm a little controversial at times, but I'm going to say it like this. Kyle is number one at great memory in history. I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. is number two. That's just my respond right here. But you're number one because you were born before Dale Jr. and Dale Jr. sees what you're doing. But you two would be incredible to see you guys get together one day about cars because Junior studies Do you watch YouTube videos?
Yes, I watch it.
Do you?
And here's this is the funny part. And listen, Junior's knowledge is...
We're trying to stop.
Yeah. But I'm going to say, Junior's knowledge is phenomenal because he's gone back and researched and read
He's a
stuff.
researcher.
Yeah. And here's the problem is, I'm not.
Yeah.
And
Right here.
I'm not. I just lived this. I lived seeing Cecil Gordon at the racetrack and seeing J.D. McDuffie at the racetrack and watching him race and was there when J.D. was killed. Was just part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just those are memories that are personal memories, not book memories, not TV memories, not YouTube memories. Those are memories that are personal memories. So I may see it a little bit different. You say you're controversial. I may see it a little bit different.
He's more controversial than me.
I may see it a little bit different.
He taught me.
But it's fascinating because the sport tries to rewrite its history sometimes and make everybody think everything was sunshine and roses, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was tough sometimes.
Yeah. You already said some things that make me go, oh my God, you know, we're doing the same thing right now. Okay, everybody, follow along. Kyle Petty Charity Ride on all social medias, and all our stops are there. Say goodbye, Kyle.
See you later.